Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions. We've got guesses. I'm Nash. Been doing Radio Dead Air for ages. But just that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gehrman, who also works in IT. If you have tech issues, questions, concerns, comments, snide remarks, you can send those to requests at radiodeadair.com. We can put that on for you. Well, what is it, Mike? Got this look on your face.
I'm looking like a little out of focus here. I was adjusting the camera thing.
Okay.
That looks better.
That looks
maybe
better? Okay, maybe.
I'd say I look kind of fuzzy, but you know, I'm kind of fuzzy.
So it has been a little bit of today. I had a little bit of an issue because I did a dumb. Because I was playing with my codec settings, with the stream settings and the recording settings for OBS.
Did you back them up before you changed them?
No. And I thought, you know what? Let's see what happens if I record the videos in AV1. Let's see if that works out okay. And then I forgot I did that.
I'm going to guess it did not work out okay.
Yeah. AV1, in case you're not really versed in video stuff, there's a couple of different, the major codec that everything can use these days is H.264. Everything, that's MP4, everything can freaking use that. But MP4 is just the wrapper in it. But regardless, everything can use H.264. Then there's HEVC. Some things can use that. And then there's AV1. That's the brand new one. It's got better compression and better image quality with less space taken up. And it's like, oh, that's neat. Except my video editor's a little older. My video editor software. And it did not have support for AV1. But I forgot I made the change. So I was spent a good 5 or 6 hours today ramming my head into a wall, trying to convert files, trying to figure out why Media Player Classic could play the files with no trouble, but all that would come up in my editor was audio. I couldn't get video to come up. And I was just like, what the fuck? And finally, I realized, oh, AV1. Now, what saved me, and I can't recommend this software highly enough, is something called Handbrake, if you're not familiar with it. Handbrake is a video encoder software, absolutely free, open source, and it reads AV1, so I popped it in. I popped it in Handbrake. I converted it. Ta-da! And
suddenly everything works.
Yeah, but it took up a lot of my day, and it was really stupid.
So the only time I've ever had something like that happen, back when I was working it was 2 jobs ago. So before I worked here for 20 years, I worked for a different company for a year, and then worked for the first company out of school for 3 years. And at that first company out of school, I was compiling some code, and the changes weren't taking. I'm like, why is this not working? Why is this not working? And it took me 3 hours to realize I was compiling to one location, but running code from a different location. That hurts when you realize I'm just dumb. I should have gone home 3 hours ago before this. I'm dumb.
Well, we got some of your questions coming up, but first of all, we got some big news this week out of Intel, and
only Intel.
Yeah, mainly because this is kind of the headliner for this week. Intel has finally released the specs, the official lowdown on Arrow Lake, which is the next iteration of their desktop CPUs, and I guess laptops are using it too as well, but it's the next CPU setup, and the results were it's impressive and it's not. Let me see if I can explain this.
Now, I'm going to say, going in, one of the things I am very impressed by. And if they can keep that going in future generations, I will continue to be impressed by it.
So they've announced the first of the new series, and they have changed the naming scheme. That's number one. There's no more.
I said, and it's about damn time.
Well, they've gone from 5 numbers back down to 3 numbers, which is where we were back in 2010, which we had 3 numbers.
Yes, but we can point at these 3 numbers and go, this is not inherently a confusing numbering scheme.
Yeah.
Though that will depend on how they use it in the future. If they just go, no, wait, we're just actually assigning 3 random numbers here. That's what we're doing.
Well, we've gone from the I series, I9, I5, I7 to U, as in Ultra. So we have the Ultra 5, the Ultra 7, and the Ultra 9. It's the Ultra 5 245K, the Ultra 7 265K, and the Ultra 9 285K. Why those particular numbers? They just, I don't know, honestly. I guess two.
So part of it is going to be psychological, because bigger numbers sound more impressive. And so the fact that the 14 core is the 245 KF, and then the 24 core is 285K, you go, okay, bigger number, more cores. Makes sense. Now, personally, I would have had the number be inherently representative of the core. So I would, instead of calling it 245, I would have called it 214, and the bigger one, 224.
Well, I don't know why they used the 4 in there. That's just confusing. That should have been a 255, 275, 295. Because then you have I5, okie dokie, because that's how they've done it before. Because like the 14700K is the I7, and the 14500 is the I5, and the 14900s. But okay, sure, fine, whatever. Now you'll notice if you can see this list here. First of all, we can see the core counts on these, and you may notice something. Normally, when they have these lists, they would show the number of cores and the number of threads, and
they don't show that no more.
Well, they do, but they're the same.
Yes, the number of cores is the number of threads. Hyperthreading is gone with this, and that's a good thing. It's a good-ish thing. That's the first big news about this is. Let me say, it's a good thing if you're involved in computer security.
If you're not aware, hyperthreading is a technique where Intel's version is hyperthreading, AMD's is called SMT, simultaneous multithreading, but it's a way where the individual CPU core can do twice the work at the same time. So typically, up until now, if you've had, say, a 10-core CPU, it could do 20 threads. So it was doing twice the work at the same time. One of the problems of that, what relies on, and keep in mind, this is very roughly described. I'm not going to go into technical detail here, but the way it worked is a system called branch prediction. Essentially, the computer would keep track of what you typically did and how things typically worked. And when you asked it to do something, it would kind of guess what was coming next.
And in certain fields, this was relatively straightforward and accurate. Like if you're a spreadsheet warrior, it might guess pretty accurately what you're going to do when you're loading up Excel.
The trouble came in with Spectre and Meltdown. These were the first two, weren't the first attacks ever of these, but these were the first two major ones that spread. What someone figured out how to do was to interrupt that branch prediction and trick it and screw it up and attack and be able to access the computer. It was a fairly bad attack, all told.
Be able to access data that they were not normally permitted to read, which is important. If they could only access data that the process otherwise had access to, it's not really that bad a thing. It's like, Oh, we read this piece of memory that the process could already read. Okay, that's not really anything.
So they could not get rid of this error so long as hyperthreading existed. You could always turn off hyperthreading, but the result would be suddenly your CPU would be effectively half as fast. It would just womp. That was not going to be acceptable. So for the long time, we just sort of muddled along, hyperthreading, SMT. We've still had those. Intel has finally said, all right, goodbye hyperthreading. We're getting rid of it. We're no more. It's not going to be there. And they did it for a couple of reasons. Number one is, like Mike said, security. Without hyperthreading, there's no more branch prediction. It's just one core doing one job at a time as it goes. No attack vector there, obviously. But the other reason is, and you can try this yourself if you know what you're doing, go into your BIOS and turn off hyperthreading or SMT, depending on what system you have, and then boot your system up, go into Windows, and open up like hardware info or something and check and see how much power your CPU is using. One of the things about hyperthreading is it really ramps up the power consumption on the CPU.
Indeed.
And considering how Intel's CPUs had notoriously been using so much power past their limits to the point of self-destructing with the 13th and 14th gen debacle which came out.
Keep in mind that was a combination of pulling power and misconfigurations across the board.
True, but another part of that is Intel has been trying to compete with AMD and failing pretty badly. And the only way...
The way they succeeded was throwing more power at things.
Yeah, it was the only way they could keep up with AMD was to just keep putting more power into the CPU and more power to the point where an Intel CPU doing the same amount of work was using a third to a half more power than an AMD CPU would be using. And it was getting ridiculous. That made them harder to cool. It made them less energy efficient. It was a problem all the way around. So one of the things that's happened by getting rid of hyperthreading, they've reduced the need for power on the CPU considerably. They've dragged that way down, which is a big deal. Now,
165 watts.
From like 280 something. So they've come down considerably. Now, some of you may be going, well, Nash, you just said turning off hyperthreading makes your CPU half as fast. Yeah. What Intel had to do here, this is where we get a little disappointing. It's impressive and disappointing at the same time. Intel has made up some performance gains with Arrow Lake. The cores themselves perform better than Raptor Lake cores do.
However, which is to be a bit expected. In each generation, you expect it to be a little, even if it's just an increment.
This was actually pretty considerable. They did a big amount. But by turning off hyperthreading, while they have gained for the base cores are faster, without hyperthreading, the overall CPU is slower. But what they have managed to do, and this is actually, I will hand it to them, this is impressive. They have managed to make these new CPUs perform as fast as like the 285K, the Ultra 9, the top of the line 285K performs as fast as a 14900K. In some instances, it does better. Multi-threading apparently does a little bit better, but it's about the same speed at much lower power. So that is real. That right there is really impressive. It's not even like with the Ryzen 9000 series with like a little less power, but doing about the same work and still having some other issues there too. This is a ton less. But this also does not, if you're currently on a 14900K, if you're currently on, say, a 7950X for AMD, there's nothing here that's saying I should run out and buy this.
No.
Because what you have right now is the same
as what you already have.
Now, that's where this is not exciting.
Yeah, that's that exactly. That said, if your system dies and you're wedded to Intel for some reason, this would be the system. You go, maybe I buy this just so I don't have to build a new computer, 3-4 years from now.
It's just it. I understand why they did this. This was ripping off a Band-Aid. This needed to be done. The restructuring that Intel did to the CPUs here had to be done. They had to make the jump away from hyperthreading. They had to make the power issues go away. These were all necessary steps. And the fact they got on a par with the previous generation with a whole new re-architecture with so much less power is an impressive feat for Intel. They are in terms of engineering, this is coming back really strong. This is really impressive. Another reason why
I'd be spectacularly impressed if NVIDIA could learn from this and go, hey, maybe we should do that. 165 watts less power on a video card would be amazing.
Yeah. One of the things about that makes this CPU notable, this generation Arrow Lake, is this is Intel's first chiplet-based CPU, or as they're calling them, tiles. And they are actually doing them a little bit different than AMD in an interesting way. AMD, I'm going to try and show you here how AMD, just show you the delidded, give you an idea what this looks like here. All right, yes, I'll put this over on the screen for you. All right, so this right here is a Ryzen 7000 series CPU without the heat spreader on it. This is what they call delidded, but this illustration here, all right, that big silver blob, big silver square at the bottom is the integrated video and input output controller and all of the things that don't need to be at the super fastest, most expensive fabrication level. That's what that big silver one is. That's how they saved some money on these. They took all the parts of the CPU that didn't have to be super fast and they put them on that one little silver one. And then up at the top, those two gold rectangles you're seeing, those are what they call CCDs. Those are where the cores reside, and I believe memory controllers in there too. I might be wrong. That might be on the silver one as well, but that's where the cores reside.
And I feel like perhaps this is a lesson they learned from AMD, who did this a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, Intel, their way of doing this is actually, and you can see these are connected across the substrate, but they are very distinct. You can see they're very distinct, separate parts. Very, very delineated. Intel has come up with a process they call tiles, which is the same concept, but they've done it in such a way. Let me see if I'm trying to find the right illustration to show you. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. Here's the illustration they shared. That's the tiny version. I don't want the tiny. I want the big one. Give me the big one. I don't want tiny. It's a big picture. Great the big. There it is. Okay. All right, there it is. At the very bottom
I thought the previous one was the Intel one. That was the AMD one, wasn't it?
That was the AMD one. Yeah.
Yeah, my bad.
At the very bottom here, we have what's called the base tile. Okay. That's what everything attached to. And all of these other ones up here, we have a filler tile because they're not using all the space, but they might do something with it later. Input, output, GPU, system on a chip that includes memory controller and everything else, and the compute tile, which is the main cores. All of these fit so snugly together, and there's not, the gaps between them are very, very small gaps between them. They fit so snugly together that compared to this, they are almost right next to each other. It's hard to tell the difference between what's called a monolithic die, where they just put everything on one piece of silicon and they don't chop anything up. They've got them close enough to almost be monolithic without actually being monolithic. Having them closer together means there's less distance for the electricity to travel, which reduces latency, makes everything work better together. Yeah, there's a picture. There's the picture of it. Let me show you.
Yeah, and by the way, those different tiles are using different nanometer scalings. So these obviously the filler tile is just a filler tile. I think that I'm not even sure it even has anything on it. It's just there to keep things from being not spaced properly.
There's the shot of them all together, and you can see there's compared to this versus AMD. There's AMD, and everything's got a lot of space between it. Intel's come up with a way to snug these all up to each other. So that's part of where they're also getting some of these performance gains. They've done, engineering-wise, Arrow Lake is a very impressive generation, and they're claiming it's going to run up to 15 degrees Celsius cooler than the 14th edition.
To answer your question there is yes, that is a lot of heat in a small die space, but that's where one of the advantages of going 165 watts less has come up, 15 degrees less. So there's less heat to get out of there.
Yeah. So these are let's get to the bad news about these. Unfortunately, in terms of competition with AMD, Arrow Lake does not beat out the 7800 X3D in terms of gaming performance. And that CPU is over 2 years old now. And the fact that both AMD and Intel can't make things faster yet than 2 years ago. AMD's competing with itself 2 years ago. Intel's competing with AMD 2 years ago. So it's in terms of now what is impressive is in terms of multi-threading performance. Intel is claiming that the 285K, the top of the line, the Ultra 9, is going to be faster than AMD's 9950X in multi-threading. Which, if you're getting this for production-based workloads, if you're getting this to do stuff with the CPU, that's impressive too. That might be a consideration for you compared to what the 9950X. But in gaming terms, AMD is still going to walk away with the crown of this. X3D RAM is still helping them out considerably with all this. So that's disappointing there. Another irritation is the socket retention arm. Oh my God. Okay, we've talked about this before.
A lot.
The LGA 1700 retention bracket. Let me see. Retention arm. Show me the arm. Show me the arm. This is here it is. This is the mechanism that holds the CPU down to the pins in the actual socket. This is what it looks like. Now, they kind of goofed this one up because it only makes contact with the CPU at 2 points. AMD with the AM5 socket made sure their socket made contact with 4 points. Now, why that matters is if you're holding something down from 4 different positions, it can't move. It's not that there's no flexing. There
could be, but there's going to be significantly less. There's less flex point possibility.
But if you're only holding it down at 2, and we're talking a 4-sided object here, and you're holding it down at 2 points, there's going to be flexing. And what happened with the 12th, 13th, and 14th gen was there was heatsink flexing so that the heatsink actually bowed down ever so slightly. In fact, it was imperceptibly slight. And while you couldn't see it with the naked eye, what it was doing was it was causing the cooler attached to it to have a little bit of a void, microscopic, but still enough of a void between the two metal parts that the thermal grease was having to do more work. And in general, what it worked out was it was harder to cool these because of that retention. Now, people came up with a solution for this. I think it was Thermal Grizzly came up with it, and then a lot of people stole the design, but there really wasn't much to it. They designed something called a contact frame that replaced that arm system with a metal, aluminum, powder-coated aluminum frame that holds the CPU down at 4 different points. Der and Thermal Grizzly came up with it. That resolves the issue. There's no more bending. But you have to remove the entire damn contact frame. This whole thing, where is it? I had the picture. Where did you go? Where did you go? My picture. There it is. That silver mechanism, that whole thing there, you have to pull that entirely off the motherboard, and the contact frame, you have to be careful placing it in there with the exact amount of torque because you're pressing the CPU down against the pins. If you do it too much or too little is not going to have enough contact, and either the CPU is not going to work or you might have memory issues not working. If you push it too much, you can damage the socket. So this would the contact frame was not an ideal solution, but it was something of a solution. Where'd it go? Fuck it. Oh, you know, I had the picture. Where did the picture? You betrayed me. Yeah, we'll put it back here. There you go.
That's not the right picture.
There's the contact frame. There it is. So yeah, it's wait, there it is. Okay. So this was not ideal, but it did work very well.
Yeah.
Well, number one, they're using the same socket arm for Arrow Lake. The same flawed one from 12th gen, 13th gen, and 14th gen. They're using the same mechanism. Except
However,
they have 2 versions of it now.
Yep.
There's the shitty one, which Intel is letting motherboard manufacturers decide which version they want to use, just like Intel, because they never, ever give anyone, they don't give motherboard manufacturers hard rules, which has been part of the problem. But the other one is the repaired mechanism. Do you know how they repaired it?
They rub some bacon on it?
No, they put a little plastic standoff under it, like a couple. That supposedly gives it some leverage, and supposedly Der did some tests with his Der and Thermal Grizzly have some incredible laser scanning technology and a lot of ways to check these sort of things out. He already has access to these because the review's coming up. He did some tests. He looked at it. It fixes it a little. But not nearly as much as the contact frame does.
And the important thing to note is the contact frame no longer works. You'd have to get a different contact frame.
That's right. The heat spreader, which is what actually gets surrounded by this contact frame, that silver part in the center is a different shape on Arrow Lake. And because it's a different shape, what?
It is so slightly a different shape that you might look at it and go, no, this looks like it should fit. And then you discover it doesn't.
It's like the difference of a few millimeters. But a few millimeters is enough. It won't fit. So they're going to have, people have to come up with an entirely new contact frame to avoid the same problem that Intel has had ever since the 12th gen CPUs for Raptor Lake came out. Or they weren't Raptor Lake. What was that? I forget. Anyway, regardless, it's ever since the 12th gen Intel CPUs came out, they've had, so they're still using that same. Meanwhile, AMD, complete new socket, no problems there, all good. They got, this is so dumb. It's so dumb, man. It's so dumb. So Intel, and because Intel has allowed motherboard manufacturers to decide which one to use. Some of them may decide to use it as a premium feature. So you're going to have to check whatever motherboard you get carefully, because not every motherboard is going to be using the same socket retention mechanism. Why this is frustrating is you have to get a new motherboard anyway, right?
Indeed.
You have to get a brand new one to use Arrow Lake. This was the perfect opportunity to ditch the old mechanism and put in a different one. And they went, nah, we'll keep the shitty one. We'll keep the shitty one.
Part of me suspects that they had a bunch of parts on hand, and they just thought, well, we can run up fab on a whole bunch of new parts, or we can just use the old parts.
So those are going to be on Z890 motherboards, which are coming soon as well. We don't actually have any independent testing yet because there's a embargo until October 24th to find out actually how these do perform. We won't get full benchmarks until then, but we'll find out. Even what Intel has already told us, though, if the numbers do hold up what Intel is saying, I am impressed. They as an engineering feat, it is really impressive. The trouble here is performance wise, and there is no compelling reason to upgrade from your existing system. There's not a real compelling reason to switch from AMD. There's not a real compelling reason to get new ones except from, the 13th and 14th gen have flaws. There's not a really compelling reason to spend all that money all over again. So unless you're building a brand new PC, these are going to sit on shelves. And considering they're still about the same speed as AMD's, and AMD is still faster in gaming, AMD is, for enthusiasts, is a more compelling option. Now, this architecture is going to be really impressive in server space. That's where Intel is going to, once again, potentially be giving AMD a run for its money, because by reducing the electricity requirements, by improving the efficiency, they're going to make this a compelling option for servers. And that's something that people might, it's used a lot less power. Okay, maybe we'll do it. But we're going to have to wait and see on that. In any event, it is impressive, but in terms of practicality, in terms of actually getting people to put down hard-earned cash, it's not going to move the needle very much. They needed to do this. They needed to change things up. They needed to start over. And the fact they got as close as they did to their previous generation while starting over and using half the power, much less power, is really good. That is impressive. That should be commended. That's wow. It's just in terms of hard-earned people paying money there's not a real good drive there, and that's an issue. Although, one little more Intel story real fast before we get to your questions. This is actually pretty good news. We were worried about this. Intel is definitely working on the next generation of their own Arc GPUs, the Celestial generation. The one that is on the verge of market right now is called Battle Mage. That's the one that's ostensibly ready to go. The one that's already been out, what was it called? The A series. What was that? Alchemist, right. Alchemist was the first one, and that's the one that's been out for a while. Battle Mage is the one that needs to come out. I don't know why Intel is holding it back. But Battle Mage is the one that's almost to market. But the fact why this is important, Intel has been doing a lot of cost cutting behind the scenes. A lot. They are in bad in terms of they are losing a lot of money. And they have been cutting the fat, as they call it. And we were all worried that one of the things that would go on the woodpile, because it wasn't selling, it wasn't blowing out doors, was their new dedicated GPUs. And that would have sucked because we need a third player in the market to compete with AMD and NVIDIA to help
And
bring
hopefully
their
bring
damn
down
prices.
prices.
Yeah. Having confirmation that Celestial is still in the pipeline is good. It means it's still being worked on. It means they're still putting money into it. It means this is still in development. Anything could change. Anything could change. But this little update is kind of it's a little bit of a relief. It's like, okay, we're still going here. We don't have a real word on what Battle Mage performance is going to look like. Probably they're going to be more competing with AMD than they are with NVIDIA. But if even if they are the budget option, if they improve the stability and the drivers, they've already done a lot of good work with their drivers. If they improve the stability and the drivers for the Battle Mage release, they are going to have and bring the price down to be commensurate with what they're actually offering. They are actually going to be a viable contender in the space, and they need to gain market share. They gain more market share, they gain developers.
Especially if they can roll this into integrated graphics, it can be, a pretty impressive thing.
That's something that I forgot to mention that about Arrow Lake. Arrow Lake is going to be using the Battle Mage. And it's not going to be like a full graphics card, but the cores that are integrated into Arrow Lake are going to be XeSS cores, ARC cores, and they are going to have AV1 encoding built in. So one of the use cases for Arrow Lake is going to be this streaming, and video encoding and whatnot, because there is a what is that called? There's a specific word or term that Intel uses for it, but what happens is it's a way of utilizing the integrated GPU to do video encoding, take work off the CPU and make the whole thing encode a lot faster. And with doing this sort of stuff, gaming, quick sync, that's it, Rare. Thank you very much. That's what my Intel's branding for it is. With doing what I'm doing right now, I would love, with my AMD GPU that does have an integrated GPU, AMD CPU with integrated GPU. There we go. I would love to be able to just take all of what I'm doing and throw it onto that integrated GPU and leave my RTX 4080 and the rest of my 7900X, the CPU, for gaming. That way it would take the workload off. I would get some frames back. It would look better. That would be great. Except the AMD version of the stuff works for shit. And for some reason, it really hates my Sound Blaster. So I haven't been able to do that. Intel, however, they got it down to a science, literally, with this. So having the XeSS cores, having the AV1 encoder built into the CPU, that is going to be for people working video stuff. That is actually going to make the Intel side of things with Arrow Lake a little bit more compelling if you're starting from scratch. Pure gaming, not so much. But if you're going to be doing work, Intel has got it is a contender in that department at least. All right, that is the news for this week. A whole bunch of Intel. Let's actually get to your questions because we do have them. Probably shouldn't have closed that. I'll have to find a dang it. Hold on, I got to open that again. I'm like, I don't need this browser anymore. I'm gonna close it. Oh wait, I need the other thing. Shit. Open. Where's the tab? There it is. That's the one. No, come here. What did we do before browser history, huh? With the tabs, like you recently closed these tabs. What did we do before this? It's crazy.
I have no recollection of that time frame.
No. It was a long ago, forgotten era. All right. First off, just a quick thank you from a viewer. This is from Peter Larkin. He wrote us a while back, not that long ago, last month, about he was going to be transferring his system to a new SSD. He wanted some information about it. We recommended using Clonezilla And G parted, and he wrote back, says, just wanted to say thank you for the advice. Only managed to see the stuff now as live has been hectic, but the advice was very straightforward, and I got it to work. Good to know. It's nice we get people saying, yeah, that worked. Cool. It's awesome. So
I mean, especially with the ones that are, more technical, and we go, okay, you can try this, you can try this, you can try this. Hearing back saying, hey, you sorted it out for me. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. All right. Next one. This is from Trevor T. Hi, Nash and Mike and Kitties. So now that we've gotten a look at what Arrow Lake is going to offer, what should I do? Plan on getting Z890 or go with X870E instead? Thanks a bunch, Trevor T. Well, it depends.
I'd say 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I'd wait till to see what the Cyber Monday deals are and go with whatever floats your boat.
First of all, unless a particular X870E motherboard looks a certain way or has one particular feature you like, there is no good reason to buy X870E or, for that matter, B860 or whichever whatever. There's no good reason for it, because as far as X670 and X870, they're the same. The only thing X870E adds is mandatory USB 4. There are X670E boards that have USB 4 already on them. There is quite literally negligible difference. There is no reason to get one of the newer ones. Basically, what it comes down to, if you want to go AMD for this generation, look over the boards, compare them on features, compare them on aesthetics, if that matters to you, and compare them on price. Otherwise, there's X870E is going to be priced higher than X670E, and you should just go with X670E, honestly, if I were you. I mean, I was looking at it to see if there's any.
Now, there are certain features on the higher boards, they say, oh, we could do this on a lower board, but we're not. For example, more M.2 slots.
As far as the Z890, we haven't seen any yet. So I don't know how they're going to perform or what's going to go on there. I would also wait, like we said earlier, wait for the contact frames to roll out, because I would consider that definitely. Although this one, the Arrow Lake's going to be easier to cool, so at least. This entirely matters what you're going to do with it. Like I was just saying. For production workloads, the Ultra 9 285K is going to have, if the benchmarks hold up, keep in mind, if the benchmarks hold up like Intel says, it's going to have a slight edge in multi-threaded tasks. Anything video editing, code compiling, 3D imaging sort of stuff. That's going to have a little bit of an edge over the 9950X or the 7950X for that matter. Because supposedly, according to Intel, it performs a little better. We'll have to see if that holds up in like about 2 weeks. We'll find out. But otherwise, if you're getting this for general purpose, either will be fine for general purpose. They're going to be competitive. Nothing is really a speed king except gaming. That's where AMD is the king on this. And that's the 7800 X3D blows away everything. Now, we know the 9800 X3D is coming soon, so might want to keep that in mind. But AMD still, handily has the lead on gaming performance. If that is your major concern, I'd go AMD. If productivity is your major concern, you might want to lean toward Intel depending on the benchmarks. And if you could go either way, if you're just doing middle of the road stuff, not leading to one or the other, either would probably work for you. So at that point, price would be your consideration on it. We're going to have Black Friday coming up soon, or Cyber Monday or whatnot. And I feel like there are going to be some deals to be had on the B650 and the X670 boards
Yeah.
because they're not going to be making them anymore. And those are still perfectly good. I still have an X670E board. I figured I was going to keep mine for a long time. We'll see how that holds up. But I've still got an X670E board. It's going to last me a while, hopefully for a few more CPU generations. Nothing about the X870E. The only thing that maybe there was like one or two boards that look kind of neat because they have white PCBs now. And I'm like, oh, that didn't match. But that's a stupid reason to spend $300-$400 on a new motherboard. Really stupid reason. Like, you know, I don't even care about USB 4 because so that, yeah. Next one comes from Raster. Hey guys, I've been trying to figure this out for a couple weeks now, and I thought you could help. I've just got an Asus Strix X670EA motherboard. Speaking of, open box from Micro Center a while back, and I'm using it with a Ryzen 7800X 3D and Corsair Vengeance DDR5 2x16, so 32 gigs of RAM, 6000 megahertz CL36 non-RGB. My trouble is I can't figure out how to get the RAM to run at 6000 megahertz. I've tried the XMP setting, which is compatible, even though this is an AMD. I checked. It won't post that way. I've tried setting it manually, but it still won't post. All I can get it to run is stock DDR5 4800 megahertz, which is not ideal for Ryzen 7000. No, it's not. You want to keep Ryzen 7000 sweet spot is 6000 DDR5 6000 megahertz. So.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for getting it to work properly, or did I end up with a dud motherboard? Well, first let's go over the basic stuff. BIOS updates. Since the first release of the AM5 X670E Ryzen 7000, there have been a number of BIOS updates, and a lot of those have to do with memory stability because the first iteration was a little creaky and had some issues. So I would check for BIOS updates. That would potentially stabilize and help the DDR5 work a little bit better. That's the first simple one. If that doesn't work, a little bit of good news here about DDR5. If you know what you're doing, and if you go and you poke around at some of the expanded settings in your BIOS, there are a lot of settings you can use to stabilize DDR5 if it's not behaving correctly. However, it's very technical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer you to a video that will help you. It helped me. Keep in mind, I wasn't trying to get to the advertised speeds. I was overclocking my RAM, and this helped. Because my RAM is technically DDR5 5600, and I use this to overclock mine to DDR5 6000, and it works very steady. I assume, based on what you're saying here, I assume what you did was you took the CL settings, the base settings, and just plugged those in manually. But there are a ton of other little sub settings, too many to mention, way below that if you go into the advanced settings, and those actually make a big difference. So this is Buildzoid. You can find him under Actually Hardcore Overclocking is his channel name. And the video you're going to look for is Easy Memory Tinings for Hynix DDR5 with Ryzen 7000. This will give you step-by-step instructions on how to get your RAM to work just fine. If you're not interested in overclocking, what I would do is I would get the base settings you had, the CL36, the DDR6000, and then follow this guide for the rest of those settings. You're probably going to want to add a little bit more voltage to your memory controller. He gives you instructions on how to do that, like 0.1 volts. Not enough to do any damage to it, but adding more voltage to the memory controller helps stabilize RAM. Other things, just little tricks. This is a really good guide. This helped me get mine running from I went from DDR5's 5600 RAM to 5600 to DDR 6000. No, mine's been running rock steady, stable ever since then. So even if you don't have the Hynix A-die, which is a type of the chip or whatnot, these settings will still help, considering your RAM is ostensibly ranked for it or intended to be run at DDR 6000. So if you don't overclock it and follow these instructions, you're probably going to get a post off of it. That's my best recommendation for you. Buildzoid is the guy behind this channel. It's called Actually Hardcore Overclocking. He does incredible deep dives into hardware. Like, just goes through the PCB, goes through the individual components, and how just crazy amount of hardware and engineering knowledge in this guy. So this is your best guide for it. I could recommend. If after all that it still doesn't work, you update the BIOS and you go through these, you adjust the settings, you do all the under settings for the DDR5, it still doesn't work. You said you got an open box at Micro Center. That's good, because Micro Center is really great about this stuff. They will either, you don't say how long it's been. I don't know what their warranty is like on open box stuff. They seem like good. They probably help you in some way, I feel like. And another thing, if you have someone who can loan you a couple sticks of DDR5, different sticks, just to see if there's...
It could be that the memory's bad.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, this is a pretty good, just for anybody who's trying to work with DDR5. DDR5 is very resilient. It's got a lot of headroom, and you can get more out of it if you just poke around with it. Like I said, I got mine with almost no effort. I got mine to DDR5 6000. The temperatures are stable. I don't get any crashes off of it. I ran memclock and OCCP and AIDA64 stabilizing benchmarks, and no issues whatsoever. Hi, Lumi. Lumi's actually here. You want to come say hi, or no? You just be a little butt. Okay. Lumi almost never come. You want to come see us? Hey, sweetie.
Just gonna come into the room, huh?
No, she's going to my footstool underneath my desk. And she's gonna sleep there, so I can't prop my feet up. Thanks, honey. Appreciate you. Okay. Freaking cats, man. All right. I'm gonna double check, see if we got any more questions come in tonight. Oh, we did. All right, so we'll have to come back to this in a second. This one is from Ellie Feeden. I think I'm saying that right. Hello, Nash and Mike. Is there a phone currently that doesn't have any AI functions or uses AI in any way?
Your work desk phone.
Yeah. It depends on what you mean by AI. AI is so fucking frustrating because it is now a marketing term that is a catch-all for tons of different stuff that does not have to. No, it's not all bullshit. It's not all bullshit at all.
It's 90% bullshit.
Well, I right now I'm using AI on this stream right now. I'm using a plugin from a Waves plugin called Clarity Effects. And what it does is it uses machine learning to listen to the background of my room and my voice, and it deletes the background noise live. There are valid uses for machine learning, which is one of the catch-all for AI. There's machine learning, there's tons pattern recognition, tons of things that we've been using them way longer than that whole AI marketing bullshit showed up. Yes, anything algorithmically driven is called AI, which is stupid. If you're talking about stuff like the gibberish generators, like Midjourney and ChatGPT and all that bullshit.
And Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried.
Oh, no, I'm thinking Sam Altman. I'm getting my Sams mixed up.
too many Sams, too many stupid Sams.
That's okay. They'll both be in jail eventually.
Yeah. So it, as to a phone, like even your phone right now, phones kind of do the same thing right now. They use two microphones and a processor to get rid of background noise when you're having a phone call. I don't know people who actually have phone calls anymore, but when you're having one, it gets rid of background noise. It's so I assume what you're talking about is stuff like the Apple Intelligence and the Gemini for Google and all that other stuff. Yes, I think the Pixel 7a is still on sale. Let me have a look. Yes, the Pixel 7a, which I use, is still on sale currently. You can get it for around $330 unlocked, or you can probably get it through your cell carrier. And that was released before they started adding stuff like it does not have the hardware part of it that they built in to work with that crap. So yes, there are still a few out there. Pixel 7a is one of them. Another option you can have is you could look for a custom ROM, but that usually takes a little bit of effort to go in, and you have to it's a special loader, and you have to unlock things sometimes, and blah 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 blah. It's kind of a pain. I don't have, like I said, aside from getting one that's like a few years back, like I say a few years, the Pixel 7a is from last year. So,
and there's no guarantee that they won't push out an update and say, oh, this is a new app. No, you can't uninstall it. You have this AI sort of thing. Well, I ran into that on my latest phone update.
The difference with this is some of these are based on hardware. They're based on a chip they've included, or at least part of the CPU included to run AI, that NPU or neural processing unit or whatever bullshit they're going to call it. Mine doesn't have one of those. So by that, the Pixel 7a doesn't have an NPU. So can't do anything with it. So it's hosed.
But they might put an app on there that says, oh, this app is on here, you can't uninstall it, and it talks to something that has those. Now you can disable the app or not use it or what have you, but it's still, they're still pushing stuff out there that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's all you can do right now is make sure that hardware wise does help, making sure your phone doesn't have the AI hardware crap in there can help. But stuff from earlier 2023 didn't have a whole lot of that. Hello, Popper. Stuff from 2023 didn't have a lot of the AI crap in there. It's come more to a head this year, obviously.
Yep.
That's the best recommendations I can give you, is get something a little bit older, but not ancient. Hello, work.
I think he's telling us it's time for the show to end.
No, we have got one more question. Got one more.
Okay.
This one came in from this is from Mara. Okay. For a while, I've been wanting to upgrade the included hard drive / SSD for larger storage. Let me give you the link here. She sent. Send this over here. There you go. And I'll pull this up myself. Issue for me has been figuring out how to access the slot in order to remove the old one and replace it with a new one. I'll include a link to the model. Would it be possible to get in there and swap the drive out, or is it too hidden behind wires and other components switch out without doing damage? Also, would the drive slot itself be compatible with a larger capacity SSD? As an aside, there's a safe way. Okay, well, we'll get to this one in a second. Well, first of all, for the SSD, yeah, it's going to be pretty easy to get it out of there. Let me bring up the screen, show you. This side panel will come off.
Yep.
And give me the bigger picture there. There it is. It's not hard to reach it at all. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit more. Okay, give me the picture. And there we go. Ooh, okay. Well, I take that back. There may be one thing you have to remove on here. Looks like. Yeah, this is an ITX.
Fan's in the way.
No, the fan's not in the way. This is an ITX motherboard is the problem. It's probably under the video card down there.
Okay.
The SSD slot.
This doesn't give us. Let me see if I can find a better picture of this damn thing.
Ryzen 5 3600, 256 gig SSD. Yeah, let's see. Get over. Yeah, it's got an NVMe SSD. 250 gig. So it is down in there. It is quite possibly underneath the video card, so you may have to pop that out of the slot. Not difficult to do. Very simple. There's a little latch toward the front of the slot that's on the motherboard. You just use your thumb, push that down. Make sure you've unscrewed the back where that holds the card in place, and just pull it up and put it to the side. And you should be able to find someone in the comments, they had difficulty swatting the SSD, had me curious concern. Yeah, it looks like this is an ITX motherboard, which is a smaller than normal size motherboard. They're a little more compact, which means I'm willing to bet that SSD slot is right down below the graphics card, just underneath it. That's probably where they put it on most of these. Let's see. So it'll drive slot be compatible with larger capacity SSD? Yes. NVMe. Oh, you include your own photo? Let me look. We have. Oh yeah, you got your own photo here. Let me bring this up here. Yeah, you're gonna have to. I can see it right now. Yeah, you're gonna have to move the. That's it right there. I see your SSD. It's Western Digital. You are gonna have to pull the graphics card out to get at it. But once you do, yes, it's NVMe. So that means any new NVMe
of the appropriate length.
Right. This would be. I think this is 22. What was the standard one? 2280. Yeah, M.2. That's an that's an M.2 2280. Yeah, you just put another M.2 2280 in there. That should work. The only trouble you're going to come in. Some of them would benefit from having a heat sink on there, and it looks like this has no room for any sort of heat sink because they put it directly underneath the graphics card, which kind of sucks. But yeah, you're going to have to remove the graphics card to get at the SSD just from the way it's placed. But you can get at it, just the GPU has to come out. All right. The other part of your question was, back to the message. Is there a safe way to remove dust without doing damage to the interior? My dad's retired IT who said to leave it be. No. But I figured I'd ask for a second perspective. Yes. You can.
Compressed air is my usual go-to to remove dust. So
that's not Molex right there. That's USB. I think that card. I'm pretty sure that card right there is the Wi-Fi card, and the USB that you're seeing, that red, green, yellow, and black. That's Western Digital is the SSD. Yes, you can see it right down there. It says Western Digital on it. That's the SSD. Yeah, this wire right there, this is the Bluetooth to USB adapter for the Wi-Fi card. Yeah, so that's what that is. All right. For dusting, relatively simple. Either purchase yourself a little electric duster off of Amazon if you want something a little more robust for long term. Or if you want to keep it simple, go to Walmart, Office Depot, whichever, and pick up a can of compressed air. You take it outside.
Take it. Yeah, take it somewhere where you don't mind the dust going.
And anything that's got a fan, you want to hold the fan still with your own fingers and then blow all that freaking crap out. All of it. Everything you see, blast it out of there with compressed air and whatnot. You don't want to leaving dust in a system is bad because dust can accumulate on heat sinks and other areas that are made to radiate heat. And when they get covered in dust, they stop radiating heat properly. That means eventually your components start to overheat and it's not good. So you want to blast. Compressed air is one way to do it. I have this little sucker here. I got this off Amazon. This is like I think this is $40. This is a little rechargeable compressed air. So I don't have to keep buying cans over and over and over. And it doesn't the one thing with compressed air is the cans freeze up and you have to wait to use them again. It's kind of been irritating. Gumsy says dust get in the fan ball bearings and wear those out. The dust gets in a lot of bad places. You want to keep your system well dusted as best you can. So yeah, just take it outside, like someplace that you have with the side open. Compressed air can, that's the cheap way of doing it, or get something like this. I don't see how much of those will run these days because they're not that expensive. They're rechargeable, they're USB, so you don't have to get a separate. They just use USB cables to charge with. Yeah, electric air dusters, you look something like that. Yeah, it's about $35-$40. You can find that, or there's one for $26. Yeah, something like that.
More uses than just your computer.
Right.
So.
These are also great for cleaning off your keyboard too. These really come in handy there. It's just the compressed air. It's one and done, and those are like $10 a can. Or you could spend like $30 and get one that'll last you for years. So that's just me. So as far as what size, make sure it is the NVMe 2280. That tells you what length the actual SSD is going to be. As far as capacity, it'll run 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 4 terabyte. 4 terabytes about as big as they got right now that anyone in there, and those aren't even all that affordable, but 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, no problem. Any capacity will work in there with no issues. So okay, that's going to do it for us for this week, I believe. We'll be back next week, Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions for Mike and myself, you can send those to requests at radiodeadair.com. We'll help you out with those. Until then, for Mike and myself, we'll see you next time. Good night, folks.